A covenant is agreed. 1852 saw a conclave of the MS held in the Palazzo del Borromeo on Lake Maggiore, Italy. This literal meeting of the minds had one purpose: to secure a future for the great undertaking they had agreed on for the betterment of humanity. Freshly returned from his Antarctic expedition, Sturgeon called for a new beginning for the group. No longer would they be a loose collection of correspondence, but instead, Sturgeon declared that a more structured and independent movement was needed. This covenant of the enlightened, as he termed it, would be free from political or patriotic pressures from the nations of the world, and would be founded on a technocratic oligarchy. The discoveries of the enlightened, such as those he had seen in revolt in Antarctica, would be ostensibly for the betterment of humanity, but only when wider humanity would prove itself worthy of those discoveries. Until such time, the Covenant would be custodians of the vault and of a new age of scientific enlightenment that it would hold. Other brilliant minds of the age stepped forward to join Sturgeon, including War Master Maximilian Schneider, President Louis Napoleon Bonaparte of the French Republic, and boya magnate Oleg Tatamotovich, the spy mistress Julia Drakenberg, and the communication specialist Mylon Loomis, the alternate energy prodigies Nikola Tesla and Augusta Byron, and engineer authors Hermann Haupt and Gustav Eiffel. This was also the first time that the polymath Burson Carpathian found noticed amongst his group as a peer and signatory of the Covenant Charter. The conclave became the first symposium of the enlightened, and it was agreed that each pair of the enlightened would have an equal status within the Covenant. There were conditions to being granted a place in this new technocracy. To become a lord or lady of the enlightened, an individual must have their scientific merits recognized by the Covenant. Beyond that, a prospective peer must offer land or some significant holding or power base to serve as location for their own secure place of learning. Sturgeon offered Welshazzam as a model of the ultimate form of such a facility, what he called a Promethean complex. Though many peers could not afford to build such a facility, they were content for now to ally themselves with half a dozen lords and ladies who could. Over time, and with the right opportunities taken, each peer would go on to found their own Promethean complex, and by this method, the enlightened began to develop a decentralized structure and a web of strongholds across the globe, essential if their independence was to be assured. At the dawn of a new age. Returning to Welshazzam with many of the newly dubbed enlightened, Sturgeon was gratified to see that in his years of absence, Markov had developed Welshazzam and fortified it with new technologies to ensure that their position on the continent was relatively secure. It was regrettable that the new Eden that surrounded the Promethean complex was already beginning to be despoiled by the industry required for the progress of humanity. A burden of the Covenant was the knowledge that their destiny was to be fulfilled. The world must be forever changed. What use of verdant flora and wonderful as fauna, if not harnessed for the enlightenment of mankind? Markov, driven by a mixture of exploratory fervor and in part the need to prove the value of their discoveries, had pressed on doggedly and codified a huge amount of the knowledge found in their exploration of the vault. He firmly believed the time was ripe for the fruits of these labours to be shared with the nations of the earth, for the betterment of humanity. For several months there was heated discussion amongst the enlightened as a correct path. Thanks to Lord Lyon Playfair's cipher, the peers were able to discuss the matters in secret over their Loomis telegraphs. Markov's urging for the sharing of the vault secrets was mirrored by Carpathian, Eiffel, Tesla, and the engineering genius Isambard Kingdom Brunel. There was a strong voice of caution, however, from Countess Byron and Lady Drakenberg. They countered that the nations of the world were not yet ready for such power. For years, the Countess had attended to courts, salons, and assemblies of power in Europe, and knew how fickle and self-interested governments could be. Drakenberg was aware of shadowy network moving within similar corridors of the power to her own agents who appeared to have loyalty beyond any single nation. The true nature of this dark council she had yet to fathom, but in her instincts warned that it did not bode well. Agents note: While our own research on the Dark Council is undoubtedly more comprehensive than the material gleaned by Drakkenberg and her spies, there is surely no harm in sourcing a copy of her notes to cross-reference with our own. Our friend, Mr. Morden, may be able to assist in this matter. Despite these warnings, the Enlightened agreed at a second symposium to dispatch envoys to major scientific institutions around the world and share without bias their research, confident that as long as no single nation was given preferential treatment or privileged access, they would be secure. Even regarded Celestian Empire was receptive to the offer of mutual advancement. In the first few years, this balance and equality stimulated the greatest surge of innovation and invention since the beginning of the Industrial Age. Regular and equal shipments of Element 270 delivered to each nation's principal scientific institution in exchange for a copy of research documentation and prototypes of whatever applications they made with the mineral. The voltaic arc technology that the Prussian Imperium had been exploring for years was given a huge boost when Tesla introduced sturgeon-infused superconductor coils into the design, after seeing what Element 270 could do for metallurgic research. The Ottoman Sultanate sent Princess Shirazad to study the Welsh Chasm so that they might embrace this new age of technology fully. Brunel's transportation rotorcraft became a reality for the British Crown, as a unique alloy of sturgeon and copper created a revolutionary metal combining lightweight and incredible strength. The Russian Commonwealth continued to explore sonic applications, now using sturgeon-reinforced resonators for breaking apart ice floes, while the French Republic finally made the breakthrough in their attempts to miniaturize their thermal projectors so that so-called heat lances could be mounted on excavating machines to enable the construction of a vast network of tunnels beneath France and her allies. The Celestian Empire had made great strides in the fields of magnetic levitation and atomic energy, though the true nuclear power eluded them as it continued to confound the Enlightened themselves. Their hubris, of course, meant that the Enlightened retained most of the gathered Element 270 for their own work. It was they who produced the most bleeding-edge applications, as half a dozen newly found Promethean complexes around the world began to work on a series of extraordinary generators, each only made possible by sturgeon crystals at their core, acting as superconductors despite the protestations of Markov and Carpathian. The Enlightened saw caution in keeping the secrets of these most potent devices away from individual nations, for they were devices that could project thrumming, shielding screens of energy to defeat projectiles, kinetic enhancers to augment engine efficiency, and machines that could influence local weather patterns. Most incredible of all were bizarre temporal and distance distorters, engines of near surreal complexity that could cause localized warps in time or teleport men and material enormous distances in mere moments. The Enlightened arrogantly presumed that no nation should have these marvels, as the applications for warfare were too obvious and terrifying to them. Agents note: amongst all these ingenuity, no one seemed to notice when Burton Carpathian combined it with Molly Darkjolkos to create a casket suitable for his own grand scheme to come to fruition. This was most unassuming of applications, and set in motions that would change the world far more profoundly than any generator would. Rule of the Custodians. For a while, the Enlightened basked in the glory of their accomplishments. The wave of new technology for which they had earned the plaudits they had desired for so long spread out across the world. Sturgeon dared to believe that what he termed the Sturgian Age would herald a new era of peace for all. Across the globe, the development of rudimentary mechanical servants known as automata grew rapidly, from the machines carrying out instructions on simple punch cards to millions of complex instructions being engraved on silver discs so that these mechanical beings could ape more complex reasoning. The eagerness with which other nations absorbed the enlightened discoveries and the innovations accelerated by Element 270 was matched only by their drive to take these incalculable precious gifts and turn them to warlike ends. Technology designed for weather control disaster relief, and agricultural resilience became a basis for whole industries of war. The discoveries of these new metal alloys and chemicals went into construction of battleships and hulking landships, cannons and bombs. The benefits of the fault revealed once again the true nature of humankind. Each nation was desperate for an advantage over the others, and frustrated that their developments would be shared impartially by the enlightened. As the nations demanded more, the enlightened felt compelled to impose rations on Element 270 shipments and demanded greater oversight as to its application. Agents note, predictably, the enlightened would use any pretext to exert undue influence and control over the other global powers. It is a testament to our belief in the Union's manifest destiny that we did not capitulate to such demands. Finally, 1856, Sturgeon called for a third symposium of the enlightened to purpose a solution to the destabilizing nature Element 270 was having on the world. The arguments became heated and the splinter factions began to form. Sturgeon used all his influence and patronage to finally carry the motion on the day. The enlightened would become true custodians of the knowledge from the vault, which was now unleashed elsewhere in the world. All the secrets and technologies would be developed exclusively by the enlightened, and withheld from the world at large until they had proven themselves capable and of responsibility for the great power it contained. There would doubtless be some anger and even some military repercussions from other nations, but as the enlightened had contained that those most terrible of technologies, including the generators for their own arsenal, it would be a brief conflict. The Rebellion of Markov. While Sturgeon was away, Markov had built a political power base as a cover for his true activities. His followers included Princess Shahrazad of the Ottoman Sultanate and Bersin Carpathia of Romania. Believed that the custodian ideology was caused through fear and jealousy in contravention of goals of a more egalitarian principles of the enlightened. On this proclamation from the symposium, the authority of the custodians was challenged by a coup instigated by Helsinki Markov, secretly an agent of the Russian Commonwealth. Markov utilized his allies and set in motion an armed insurrection at the Welsh Chasm and Leonidas Spire, and fled in the ensuing chaos, taking with him generator technology and a large shipment of Element 270 to his patron, Tsar Vladimir. Fighting broke out between the custodians and egalitarians, resulting in chaos throughout the Promethean complexes around the world. Princess Shahrazad and others took many of the prized secrets of the Covenant back to their homelands. Thanks to Markov's treachery, the world now had access to the most potent weapons and technology the greatest minds on the planet could envisage. The world was set on a path that would surely lead to self-annihilation. Though the powers of the generators were twisted, weather-control devices intended to green the world's desert were instead used to invoke tempests and devastated towns and villages. Terrifying force projectors were created with the power to make both metals and the more horrifyingly flesh run like wax. Indeterminate minor conflicts continued to flare up around the world, now enlivened by the desire for rival powers' technological and scientific secrets, as well as whatever territory and resources it had to offer. For all the scintillating knowledge bestowed and by the supposed legitimate age, basic human nature with its greed, pride, hubris, desire for power, and dominance remained unchanged. But the efforts of the enlightened could not prevent human ingenuity developing ever more dangerous devices from the knowledge they had already unleashed. Pandora's box was well and truly opened, and for the enlightened even worse was soon to come. Although the revolt quickly subsided when its participants realized the truth, it had already served its purpose. For the traitor Markov, in the wake of the revolt, its consequences, the enlightened left were shaken and shell-shocked. They had believed themselves in their new domain above petty concerns of nationalistic fervor and factionalism. Their conceit, that prideful self-assurance, now lay in ruins.